Roman Reigns has held the title of Tribal Chief for years. He has defended it against outsiders, against his own family, against legends, against monsters. He has never once voluntarily let it go, until Monday night, until he looked at Jey Uso, and passed it on. Welcome back to Wrestling Stands, the channel that has been tracking the Bloodline story from the very beginning, and can tell you with complete certainty that what happened on Monday Night Raw is the single most significant moment this storyline has ever produced. I'm your host, and tonight we are breaking down the moment that nobody, and I mean nobody, not the most tuned-in observer, not the most connected insider, not the most careful reader of every available signal in the preceding weeks, saw coming in quite this form. Roman Reigns, the original Tribal Chief, the man who built the head of the table mythology from the ground up and carried it through every challenge, every civil war, every betrayal, and every war of succession, voluntarily, publicly, ceremonially named Jey Uso as his successor. Not his champion, not his soldier, not his instrument deployed toward a SummerSlam championship match. His successor, as Tribal Chief, the head of the table, changing hands not through conquest, not through betrayal, not through a bloodline civil war, but through Roman Reigns choosing to pass the crown himself. The ground beneath the bloodline story just shifted. Everything we thought we knew about where this story was going has to be reconsidered. And this breakdown is where we start. Quick favor before we dive in: if you enjoy this kind of content, please smash that like button and hit subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It's totally free for you, but it means the world to us and helps the channel grow. Already subscribed? You're absolutely brilliant, thank you. Alright, let's get into the video. Let's start with the sheer historical weight of what Roman Reigns did on Monday night, because it requires proper acknowledgement before any analysis can do it justice. Roman Reigns has been the Tribal Chief since the character was introduced. He has protected that designation against every conceivable threat. Solo Psycho tried to claim it during Roman's absence and was eventually forced to cede the ground. Solo then challenged Roman directly for the designation in the boldest challenge the Bloodline story has produced, and Roman responded with a declaration of war rather than any suggestion that the title was negotiable. And then he gave it to Jey Uso, freely, on Raw, in front of the arena and the world. To understand what this means, you need to understand what the Tribal Chief designation actually represents in this story's internal mythology. It is not a WWE Championship; those can be won and lost in matches with referees and rules. It is not a position bestowed by management or earned through tournament victory. It is the head of the family, the person the entire Anointed professional wrestling dynasty answers to, the one whose acknowledgement matters above all others. Roman Reigns built his entire recent career identity around that designation and its mythology. Voluntarily handing it to Jey Uso is not a storyline development. It is a structural transformation of the entire bloodline narrative. The architecture changes, every relationship within the faction changes, and every story currently in motion, the Solo War, the Fatu acknowledgement, the Rock's decree, the SummerSlam landscape, has to be understood differently with Jey Uso as the Tribal Chief. Let's talk about why Jey Uso. Of all the possible successors Roman Reigns could have named, of all the paths this story could have taken, why does Jey Uso receive the crown? Because it is not an arbitrary choice and it is not a shock saga. There is deep, specific, earned storytelling logic behind this election that makes Jey the only character in the Bloodlines universe for whom this moment could have landed as authentically as it does. Jey Uso's journey within the Bloodline is the most emotionally complete arc in the entire saga. He began as Roman's most devoted soldier, the cousin who would do anything, absorb anything, execute any instruction because Roman said so and because the family structure demanded it. And then, gradually, painfully, through some of the most genuinely affecting character work in recent WWE history, Jey fought his way toward his own identity. He pushed back, he resisted, he left, he found himself. He became main event Jey Uso on his own terms rather than as an extension of Roman's will. And then he came back. Not because Roman demanded it, not because the bloodline pressured him, because Jey Uso, having been his own man for long enough to know what that felt like, chose to return to the family. That choice, made from a position of independence rather than obligation, is the thing that separates Jey's relationship with Roman from every other bloodline member's relationship with Roman. Jey is not in the faction because he has to be, he is there because he decided to be, after everything. Roman Reigns, who has spent his entire Tribal Chief era surrounded by people who acknowledged him under duress or out of obligation or out of strategic calculation, has always known the difference between loyalty and genuine choice. Jey Uso gives him genuine choice. And the man who built a dynasty on the principle that the right person leads the family, when that man looks around the room and asks himself who is actually ready, who has actually earned it, who the family should genuinely follow, the answer is the person who chose to be there when he didn't have to be. The King of the Ring trajectory makes Jey the most publicly positioned, most narratively prepared member of the Bloodline to step into the tribal chief role. The tournament run has been a public demonstration of what Jey can be when the full weight of his ability and his story is pointed at a single objective. A king receiving the tribal chief designation from the man he was supposed to replace on the card. That is the kind of layered, self-referential storytelling that rewards the most attentive audience. Now, and this is where the analysis has to go beyond the ceremony and into the strategic layer, let's talk about what Roman Reigns gets from making Jey his successor. Because Roman Reigns does not do anything without a calculation underneath it. And the calculation underneath choosing Jey as his successor is, when you examine it, one of the most sophisticated moves the tribal chief has ever made. Roman is at war with Solo Sikoa. He declared it himself after Solo's rejection, "I will no longer beg, I will destroy." The war is live. And in that war, Roman's most significant strategic vulnerability is not physical, it is narrative. Solo's entire argument against Roman is that the bloodline is Roman's doghouse. That the family members within it are instruments rather than partners, tools rather than people, dogs rather than family. That argument gains traction every time Roman appears to be operating the bloodline as a personal fiefdom rather than a genuine family structure. Crowning Jey Uso as his successor destroys that argument at the foundation. Because a man who runs a doghouse does not name a successor. A man who considers his faction members as tools does not hand the most powerful designation in the family's mythology to one of those tools. Roman crowning Jey is Roman demonstrating, publicly and permanently, that the bloodline under his leadership was never only about him. That he has been preparing someone for this. That the tribal chief position was always bigger than the man who held it. It is the most elegant possible counter to Solo Sikoa's manifesto. And it makes the war with Solo still live, still coming, a war where Roman's moral position is significantly stronger than it was before Monday night. Solo is not fighting a tyrant who won't let go of the crown. He is fighting an institution that has just proved its own legitimacy by willingly passing power to the next generation. The Rock's decree arrives here with new, complicated significance. The corridor conversation in Baltimore, "Stay together, no matter what, Jey wins King of the Ring, Cody Rhodes loses his championship," was issued with specific intent. The Rock's directive for Jey was championship pursuit. Take Cody's title, bring it to the family. That was the Rock's vision for Jey Uso's King of the Ring briefcase. Roman crowning Jey as tribal chief is not the same thing as the Rock's vision. It is adjacent to it. It could serve it, but it could also supersede it. If Jey Uso is now the tribal chief, his agency within the bloodline structure is fundamentally different from what it was when he was Roman's soldier or even Roman's chosen champion. A tribal chief makes decisions. A tribal chief leads. A tribal chief does not simply execute the instructions of another family member, however senior. Not even The Rock. Which means The Rock, watching from home as he said he would be, is watching Jey Uso be crowned in a ceremony that was not in his decree, was not discussed in Baltimore, was not part of the plan The Rock outlined. And the question of whether The Rock endorses what Roman did on Monday night, whether the High Chief's authority is satisfied by this development or whether it produces a complication in the family's hierarchy that The Rock will feel compelled to address, is one of the most significant open questions the crowning has created. Roman may have crowned Jey in a way that preempts The Rock's ability to redirect Jey toward his own agenda. If Jey is tribal chief, he follows his own judgment. And if Jey's judgment leads him toward Roman's World Heavyweight Championship rather than Cody Rhodes' undisputed title, which is a possibility we have been tracking since the camera caught Jey watching Roman's belt, then The Rock's decree has been effectively outmaneuvered by Roman Reigns' Monday night ceremony. Let's talk about Solo Sikoa receiving this news. Because Solo Sikoa just challenged Roman Reigns for the tribal chief designation with the stakes explicitly named, winner becomes the tribal chief of the entire bloodline, permanently, with every family member answering to the victor. He issued that challenge with the specific power that comes from being the outsider demanding entry to a contest that the incumbent was trying to avoid. Roman has just made that challenge infinitely more complicated. Because if Jey Uso is now the tribal chief, if Roman has passed the designation rather than defending it, then Solo's challenge is no longer directed at the person who holds it. Jey Uso holds it. Which means the bloodline civil war, should Solo pursue it, is no longer Roman versus Solo in the way it was shaped before Monday night. It is potentially everyone versus Solo. The new tribal chief defending the designation that Solo wants. Roman, no longer the tribal chief but presumably still the most powerful person in the faction's orbit, operating in a different capacity. The moral geometry of the conflict entirely rearranged by a ceremony that Solo could not have anticipated and cannot easily counter. Solo called the Bloodline a doghouse. Roman answered by naming a successor, building an institution, and leaving Solo's challenge aimed at a target that has moved. The chess move is breathtaking in its implications. And the question of whether Solo accepts the new frame, whether he shifts his challenge to Jey, or whether he insists that Roman's crowning is illegitimate and the war remains between the two of them, is the question that the next chapter of SmackDown has to answer. Jacob Fatu, who 1 week ago went to one knee and acknowledged Roman Reigns as his tribal chief, now exists in a bloodline where the man he acknowledged has named a new tribal chief. That is a remarkable sequence of events for a character who has spent the past several months building his loyalty to Roman on the specific foundation of a conscious, self-determined decision. Fatu chose Roman. Roman chose Jey. And Fatu now has to process what that sequence means for the loyalty he publicly, ceremonially, on one knee declared. Does the loyalty transfer? Is Fatu's acknowledgement of Roman an acknowledgement of the institution, such that Roman naming Jey means Fatu's loyalty now flows to Jey as the new tribal chief? Or is Fatu's loyalty personal to Roman, in which case the crowning creates a question about what happens to Fatu's specific, deliberately chosen allegiance in a faction that now has a different head? This is not a simple question, and the Samoan werewolf's answer to it, which the story will eventually demand, is one of the most consequential character moments available in the current bloodline landscape. Fatu on one knee for Roman meant something specific. What does it mean now? The Jey Uso that walks into SummerSlam in Minneapolis as the tribal chief, if this development holds, if the ceremony produces the institutional reality it appears to establish, is a Jey Uso operating at a level of narrative authority and personal significance that the character has never previously occupied. He is not the king of the ring challenger. He is the tribal chief who happens to be the king of the ring challenger. Two designations simultaneously, the family's leadership and the tournament's crown, in one person, pointing at one of the most consequential SummerSlam decisions in years. Does he go for Cody Rhodes, as The Rock decreed and as Roman previously instructed? Or does he look at the World Heavyweight Championship, the belt Roman still holds, the belt that the camera found you watching while Roman spoke, and make the kind of decision that a tribal chief makes rather than the kind of decision a soldier follows? A tribal chief charts his own course. A tribal chief decides what the family pursues, and what Jey Uso pursues at SummerSlam, now that he has been named Roman's successor, is entirely and completely and for the first time in his career his call to make. The tribal chief has been crowned, the successor has received the designation, and professional wrestling, which has spent years asking who the head of the table is and watching Roman Reigns answer that question comprehensively and repeatedly, has just been asked to ask it again. But this time, the answer is different. This time, the answer has Jey Uso's name on it, and the entire Bloodline universe, Roman, Solo, Fatu, The Rock, the Usos, MFT, Cody Rhodes, everyone whose story touches the family, has to figure out what to do with that. Thank you so much for watching. Wrestling Stands family means everything, as always. We'll see you in the next one.